He's found the body. Her bangled arm trails in the runoff. His steely, bespectacled eyes are seeing, yes, but not quite believing. That's our opening scene, the sleuth and the dead woman he loves. 2 days ago, Brendan, that's our protagonist, had got a call from his ex Emily, that's our corpse, that was confused, rambling, and distressed.
I did what she said with the brick. I didn't know it was bad, but the pin's on it now for poor Frisco, and they're playing it all on me.
He didn't know much about what she'd gotten herself into, but he could tell whatever it was, she wanted out. He'd spent the intervening period looking for leads, shaking down miscreants, and trying to decode Emily's message, but now the truth, cold and hard like a corpse, is staring him and us in the face. None of that had meant a damn thing. So Brendan makes a crazy play. He drags Emily's body down into the drain. That'll buy him some time, keep the bulls and their heat off his back, but it might just put him in their crosshairs too. Either way, now the only thing to do is go back to school and keep digging until the case cracks and reveals maybe justice, maybe vengeance instead. Either way, it's some... Wait, back to school? For 2005's Brick, concept is king. Teenage gumshoes and high schooler femme fatales attend classes in the day and run drugs at night, dodging death, weaving webs, and all the while speaking near incomprehensibly.
You think you can get this straight?
I'll put that body to bed. I don't know a damn thing about whatever troubles, and that works for me.
Why, is Brad the pin?
Brad? It's a sap. I downed him on his field and his crew didn't bite.
Now, Brick is widely considered a cult classic, but at the time, it had a lot of people scratching their heads. The film blends a familiar setting, a sunny Californian suburb peopled largely by school-going teenagers, with a familiar genre, the noir, the lone detective caught up in a shadowy world of crooks and crime and double agents, to form a mutant picture, a combination you'd expect to shudder and creak, to be as beat up, unsteady, dripping as much blood as its protagonist. The wonder is that it isn't. The wonder is, Brick really works. In today's video, then, we'll take a trip together into Brick's world of bizarro adolescence and investigate ourselves what resonances and sympathies the seemingly disparate plot and setting types are able to reveal in one another, and in the man behind the combination. Because Brick is also the feature debut of Rian Johnson, writer and director of the piece. And that makes sense. Rian Johnson loves retro, right? And hey, say it with me, internet. Rian Johnson loves subverting expectations. But the ways Brick ducks convention, and just as importantly the ways it doesn't, might just provide the observant viewer a better understanding of, and maybe even a greater appreciation for, the choices its director has gone on to make in subsequent years and on subsequent projects. In lieu of a detailed summary, know that a lot of Brick's action revolves around a local drug lord's heroin bricks going missing or getting cut without his knowledge. Know that the film is a huge multi-stage game of cat and mouse, or maybe cat and mice, and know that the cat and most of the mice are adolescents. But no, I'm not going to give you a whole beat-by-beat summary of Brick's rather Byzantine plot, partially because a lot of those details aren't going to be super relevant to where this video essay is going, but also because those details aren't necessarily the most important things to Brick either. At the time, Roger Ebert's review of the film noted that Brick's story is never clear while it unfolds, but it provides a rich source of dialogue, behavior, and incidents. And more recently, Johnson said a similar thing himself in a 2019 interview with Vulture. With Brick, the pleasure of the movie does not lie in, oh my god, it was her all along. The pleasure of it is being on this journey as Brendan goes through this underworld and all these complex layers reveal themselves. Ebert's review, after noting the above, recognizes that the result is Brick working the same way the classic Hollywood noirs worked. That, the classic Hollywood noir, like most genre categories, is a broad and somewhat arbitrary one, but the blog Heart of Noir sums it up as referring principally to the wave of crime films in the 1940s and 50s that drew equally from American hard-boiled fiction and German expressionist filmmaking, and whose philosophical, political, and aesthetic impulses joined together to create a specific kind of darkness. hence the name. The Maltese Falcon, the Big Sleep, Double Indemnity, and so on. A man often somehow damaged or isolated, lost in a nightmarish urban environment, maybe literally ruined or bisected, as in The Third Man's Vienna, or more often in an American equivalent. Physically intact, perhaps, but as Heart of Noir notes, still rocked by a sort of post-war spiritual crisis. Still settings in which our protagonists are ironically isolated. To many modern fans, it's precisely this, the sense of alienation, that gave classic film noir a truly enduring appeal. That Brick works in the way the classics of noir did is, of course, no coincidence. As has become obvious from his subsequent body of work, Rian Johnson loves mysteries, and in some ways, Brick represents the start of that love affair. Talking to AV Club in 2006 about the origins of Brick, Johnson said, "It started with the notion of doing a detective movie, and for me that was really inspired by Dashiell Hammett. I went through a period where I got really into his books." Johnson's love of Hammett and the proto-noir tradition he represents, these are key to Brick. A decade later, he'd tell Vulture that the film was his attempt to capture the impact that reading Hammett for the first time had had on him. More recently, in the wake of the director's higher-profile mystery offerings, a lot of viewers, and even some critics, have seen Johnson's work in the mystery genre as an attempt to outsmart his own material, surpass that established mystery tradition. But in the director's own words, again from the Vulture interview, "One thing I don't believe in is the notion that this is a dusty old genre and you have to find a way to flip the old tropes on their heads. The basic machinery of it, the tropes of it, are why it works." And this isn't just retrospect talking. Johnson was expressing much the same sentiment back when Brick came out. Seattleist asked the director about the film's melding of genres, and he said that the point wasn't so much to give the genre a twist, as to refresh our take on it so we could just do the genre straight up. In some ways then, Brick was a harbinger of times to come. While doing old genres again, straight up, wasn't a new thing in 2005, it would become a fixation of Hollywood's over the next 5 to 10 years. Johnson would even join in with his next 2 films, but unlike some of his contemporaries, he'd never just do old genres again. Look at Looper. Classic time travel sci-fi thriller, for instance, except the protagonist and the antagonist are the same guy. Looper uses the fact that you're distracted by that, trying to puzzle out all of the ramifications to hammer home its point. To quote Kim Newman's contemporary review for Empire, "If you could go back in time and tell your younger self where he was going wrong, the kid still wouldn't listen to you. And if you saw how badly things were going to turn out, you'd probably just make them worse." It's about the limits of time travel, sure, but not the technological ones, the human ones. Spoilers for Looper, I guess. Anyway, Rian Johnson loves scrambling things up, making it new. Rian Johnson loves the refresh. And in Brick's case, that refresh happens by putting a detective movie in a setting where you couldn't lean on your preconceptions. But this, of course, required the right setting. One that would fit the narrative and thematic contours of noir, the complex social webs, the alienation, but which wouldn't do so obviously. A setting that was well worn, familiar, but not from this angle. And so, the school kids. Now, it might seem extreme to apply grown-up concepts like alienation to teenagers, especially if it's been a little while since you were that age yourself, but as the increasingly popular childist movement is at pains to point out, shout out that Leftist Cook's latest video one time, kids are people. They are human, not just humans in progress. They're simply, smaller ones. And the corollary of accepting children or teens even as full people, as humans, is accepting that they too can be dehumanized. You're probably aware of the new waves of anti-shooter schools being built in the US, featuring such innovations as bulletproof glass windows, reinforced doors with motion detectors and smoke cannons lining the hallways. You may also be familiar with this design philosophy resulting in those schools' children feeling afraid, feeling dehumanized, like suspects, not students. But you may not know that in a lot of ways, alienation was inherent to modern schooling and its structures even before the billion-dollar school security industry started building fortified panopticons. In his book Pedagogy of the Oppressed, discussing what he called the banking model of education, that is, the filling of students with the detached, static contents of a teacher's narration or an education board's curriculum to be retrieved later on, learning as the recalling of facts, the rehearsal of learned answers, that sort of thing, Brazilian educator and theorist Paulo Freire wrote that it is the people themselves who are filed away through the lack of creativity, transformation, and knowledge in this at best misguided system. Freire goes on to argue that this still influential banking model turns pupils into mere objects. The more completely they accept the passive role imposed on them, the more they tend simply to adapt to the world as it is and to the fragmented view of reality deposited in them, and that this model is ultimately an effort to turn women and men into automatons. And beyond what's baked into modern schooling as a concept, there's also the social element, right? To again quote Johnson speaking to Vulture, "Part of what's fun about watching Brick now is that I wrote it not that far out of high school. There was something that made sense about the mythologized emotional memories of high school, and there was something about the alienation of the genre. That type of anti-hero made a lot of sense in terms of what a lot of us felt we were in high school, people outside this sort of mystery box we can't quite get into." So, alienation, that ironic isolation from the very world that crowds around you, this is key to film noir, yes, but it's a feeling far from unique to it. And it does, as Johnson recognized, apply rather well indeed to how it feels to be a school kid. So this is not to say that Brick is secretly a film about the problems of mainstream pedagogy or about the future of hostile campus architecture, obviously. It's not at all. It's just to acknowledge that setting the destination for this genre transposition isn't nothing. That there's a reason Johnson chose a school for his backdrop and adolescence for his characters. It's to acknowledge that if noir originally landed in part because there was a widespread anxiety and uncertainty and alienation to be found in the post-war urban experience, it can land here too, because in a sense, the same is true of contemporary adolescence. Or, near contemporary. And it's to say, characteristically, that Johnson genre refresh has a secondary effect in Brick, perhaps less visible than the primary one, but just as interesting, I think. Combining a tightly written, hard-boiled plot with an adolescent cast in a suburban high school setting not only makes us look at the former with fresh eyes, affirms its validity, it kind of does the same for the latter, too. And that's great. 10 out of 10. Nice video essaying, Pillar of Garbage. Why, thank you, Pillar of Garbage. But there is kind of a rub here. One you might be feeling at this point too if you've seen Brick. Seen the film where people say things like this.
Blowing at me if you want, hashhead. I got all 5 senses and I slept last night. That puts me 6 up on the lot of you.
Where our protagonist does a Looney Tunes knockout. And where the femme fatale confronting conclusion doesn't just use well-worn tropes, but practically slaps you in the face with them. That being the question, are we fools to take the film seriously? Is this whole thing not kind of a spoof? Johnson himself praised the Hemingway-like tone of Hammett's prose, the style this film is so consciously channeling, as having not an ounce of fat and no sentiment. No sentiment? And hey, Rian Johnson loves subversion. That means it's all empty, really, right? Well, okay, real quick, let's talk about Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction is, in many ways, a film similar to Brick, to the point I feel a comparison is instructive. Both were indie pictures that stood out from Hollywood's mainstream, both were made by now-famous auteur directors on an early career upswing, and both are generally considered cult classic neo-noirs, Tarantino's film very obviously taking more than a few cues from the same old masters as Johnson's. But there is, I think, a marked difference in spirit. Pulp Fiction gets cited a lot as a quintessentially postmodern film. People sometimes talk about Brick in these terms too, but not to the same extent. And a lot of that's down to the fun Tarantino's having with the conventions of filmmaking. You've got the non-linear structure, the way it very deliberately pushes the boundaries of good taste, and the way it's all shot through with an irony thick enough to taste. But just as important is the way he's not trying to hide any of that. If the film takes Hollywood, takes pop culture apart, it sort of leaves the pieces on the table and looks at you over them, smirking. To be sure, it is an engrossing film, well made, bold, titillating, but to at least one contemporary critic, that titillation was not enough to overpower the film's hollowness. It's literally called Pulp Fiction, a genre descriptor. Everything is at arm's length. The film, maybe more so than anything else in Tarantino's body of work, is characterized by this very Gen X sense of disavowal, of ironic distance, of alienation. Now, the characters in Brick are alienated, and yes, it depicts alienation, but that's not the same thing, is it? And like we discussed, Brick plays around with genre, but it doesn't play with genre to play with genre, to take you out of the movie, show you the fourth wall. It's the opposite. Brick does it to hook you in. I mean, just compare the endings, and you'll see what I'm getting at. Pulp Fiction's story ends with two of our focal characters, the hitmen Jules and Vincent, laying low in a diner after a job got messy. And they happen to have chosen the very diner from the film's opening.
Everybody be cool, this is a robbery!
Jules and Vincent, well, mainly Jules, manage to defuse the situation, and they pick up their Holy Grail briefcase and head out, and we roll credits. Again, it's important to note that this, the last scene of Pulp Fiction's story, is not the end of its plot. Chronologically, the last event the film depicts is Butcher's escape, which we, the viewer, watched nearly an hour ago as that last diner scene plays out. Watching Jules and Vincent walk off into the sunset, or I guess sunrise, with this non-finality in mind creates a split effect. On the one hand, there is a triumphal feeling, whatever happens next, however soon our heroes might get Elvised, this moment of victory, of redemption, will forever have happened. And there is an amount of comfort, some sense of resolution, but on the other, that sense is a compromised one. Yes, you feel it, but you know that feeling is somewhat misguided. You have to experience that feeling at the ironic distance the rest of the film operates on. By virtue of the way it organizes its plot, Pulp Fiction goes out of its way to ensure that. There's feeling, titillation, sure, but real belief is never on the table. Brick ends differently, with our protagonist on the school's football field, meeting the mysterious femme fatale Laura, who'd both helped and hindered the sleuth over the course of his investigation. Brendan's quest had led to him infiltrating that drug lord's circle. He'd discovered Emily's killer was among the gang's ranks, and he'd found out that her eventual fate was tied to that of the Pin's Bricks, and he'd just about managed to get himself out of the suburbs' now disintegrating criminal underworld cleanly. Well, cleanly-ish. A shootout breaks out at an underworld powwow when the last of the Pin's Bricks is found to be missing, and both sides suspect the other of foul play. The next day, Brendan finds out from Laura that he'd been successful in pointing the cops to Emily's killer, who had subsequently died in a shootout, so most of the film's loose ends are tied up, but not all of them. And Brendan, smart cookie that he is, sees this too. He tells Laura that he's figured out her game. She took the brick. She set last night's carnage up, just like she'd taken the other brick, given it to Emily, set her up too. Maybe Laura didn't pull the trigger, but ultimately, she was behind the murder of the girl Brendan loved. Brendan tells her that not only does he know, but that he'd already told the school, and that if he's right, the school's VP will find the missing brick in her locker. And we cut to... Maybe there is no sentiment in Brick, but there is truth at the end. And by implication, there is belief. So sure, Brick is funny, at times in a self-aware way, but that doesn't make it a spoof, it just makes it a noir. Discussing the film's tone with Seattleist, Johnson had this to say. I didn't want to be afraid of humor, even though we knew the danger was falling into camp and being goofy. That would have been the wrong way to go. But I didn't want to overreact to that by being humorless. I wanted it to be funny. If you go back and watch a lot of the noirs, they're genuinely funny, in very intentional ways. That's something I wanted to carry over. And to again quote Ebert's review of Brick, What is impressive is his absolute commitment to his idea of the movie's style. The actors enter into the spirit. We never catch them winking. The lack of the wink is well observed by Ebert, and important, I think. It sums up the difference between Brick and a film like Pulp Fiction, and I think the difference between the image of Rian Johnson that's popular online and the reality of the man's approach. Because Rian Johnson loves mysteries, sure, but Rian Johnson also loves answers. And that isn't just me being glib. In a lot of ways, Brick is a window into Rian Johnson's wider creative philosophy, both on a superficial level. Rian Johnson loves mystery, Rian Johnson loves retro, Rian Johnson loves a good shot, and also beyond that, the underlying love for storytelling and for genre, and the way that belief and faith sometimes look like doubt. Yes, Rian Johnson loves subverting expectations, but no, not just to be a dick, not to take the piss out of the viewer for having them in the first place, but in order to come at the substance beneath those expectations in a fresh way, a way that shakes off the dust and the ring rust that builds up and cakes stories and franchises and tropes over a long enough time of just doing the thing straightforwardly. Yes, I am talking about The Last Jedi, because it's the same thing, right? Testing the strength and continued viability of the moral aesthetic bundle George Lucas first rolled together in 1977, finding the core still holds, letting go of the dross and rallying around the gold. Rian Johnson loves Star Wars, but not because EU Luke had some crazy feats, or because some card somewhere said Ki-Adi-Mundi was however many years old. He loves it because he, like us, once watched this mutant hippie Flash Gordon soap opera about bravery in the face of fallibility and second chances, opposing evil, overcoming hate, and somehow that thing had the power to rock our collective shit. So the curveballs The Last Jedi throws, or rather that the film's first half or so throws, these constitute the refresh, the twisting of the thing in order to do it more straight up. This is preserving the heart of the thing, finding that the past doesn't have to die, that it can be reborn. We could also look to Poker Face, the Natasha Lyonne-led mystery series he created for Peacock 2 years back. As I pointed out at the time, the show brings a fresh approach, a Rian Johnson refresh to the genre. Not only is it the Columbo-style How Catch 'em rather than the more standard whodunit, it upends the How Catch 'em structure too by keeping protagonist Charlie Cale outside the law enforcement structure. She's not a cop or a PI. In fact, she's kind of a fugitive. Typically, the How Catch 'em asks, what is being overlooked? What mistake did the crook make, which when noticed by the institutionally backed protagonist will confer a straightforward resolution, but Poker Face takes that power away. The question flips from how could they solve this to how could you? And from the show's marriage of this new bottom-up dynamic to its American road trip format, with its panoramic, empathetic survey of life across the country, emerges this wonderfully life-affirming murder mystery program, clearly in love with the tropes and bones of the genre, faithful in its construction, but fresh in its direction. Because Rian Johnson loves mysteries, loves Hollywood, loves entertainment, but not blindly. There does tend to be a questioning. This is great, his work says, but why limit it? Why not see how flexible that greatness is? Why not stretch it? Find where exactly the greatness resides, which parts of the thing can be lost or reshaped without losing that greatness. Johnson's work asks us, sometimes challenges us to reconsider things we've become accustomed to, whether these be genres, franchises, sometimes wider cultural narratives, and to reflect on our affinities. Do we love these things? Can we believe in them, through them? Or do we just love the way they're packaged? Is it Star Wars you love, or do you just like power fantasy and telling people hand shot first? Johnson's work asks this, but just as importantly, it trusts us to answer. All this is present in Brick, albeit in miniature. Here, the validity of genre of noir in the 21st century is put under review, as is the validity of adolescent experience. And for both, belief persists. Beat up, perhaps unsteady, dripping blood, but standing up all the same. That's the end now. I hope you liked the video. But hold on just a moment. If you're a Brick fan and you didn't come here because you watch my channel, let me just shout out another cool video on the film here on YouTube I came across while researching this one. Check out Brick, Mysteries in Microcosm by Matthew D. Gilpin. It's a great little piece. And if you're the inverse, a me fan, maybe even one who had no idea what Brick was before this video, then hey, this one was a Patreon community video, which means this video's topic was suggested by my patron Boom, and that this suggestion was selected after a lengthy gestation period by all my other Patreon supporters. It's always trickier writing a video like this if I'm trying to think my way into an idea. My standard process is sort of the opposite of that, so I hope this one turned out okay. I'd hate to think Boom waited, Jesus, 2 years for a dud. And if you want to be able to influence future video topics in this way too, why not join up at the link below? You also get bonus stuff. I'm hoping to get a presentation on how I make video essays up as this month's extra video, and you get thanked at the end of the video, like all these chads on screen now, especially Hanan, Daniel Goldhorn, Kwang Yu Liu, Something Something Capitalism Bad, Thomas R, and Weirdy Beardy. So hey, think about it. Thanks all for tuning in, and see you next time.